Hello, this is Ed Spicer, and this is www.spicyreads.org. I caught up with Atinuke at the International Children's Book Festival. She was gracious enough to allow me to interview her about her writing. Enjoy. Welcome to www.spicyreads.org. It is such a pleasure for me to have this opportunity to interview you. Please tell viewers about how you came to write Anna Hibiscus.
Children in the UK don't know about the Africa that I come from. Middle class, affluent, very modern, very urban Africa. Children that I meet don't know about that Africa. So partly Anna Hibiscus came for them.
I've noticed that you've gone on to write about car spotting. Now, tell us about this different series.
Well, I was very inspired by a photograph that my father emailed to me from Nigeria, which showed a family sitting in the back of a Toyota Corolla pickup truck, except the front of the pickup had been removed and the back of the pickup was being pulled by 6 cows. And I wrote a story about how that came to happen, and that's how the number one was born. And my publisher said, please write more about the number one, because boys, there aren't books for boys. It takes a long time to get things right. I wrote 13 versions of the number one car spotter before Walker Books said, you've got it right. Yes.
How long did you live in Nigeria?
I lived in Nigeria and went to school in Nigeria till I was 10 years old. And then when I was 10, I started going to school in the UK. But I went back to Nigeria for every holiday, so I would say I lived half and half until I went to university, and then since then I've been to Nigeria much less.
Some U.S. readers have criticized Anna Hibiscus because it's Africa, amazing Africa, and not Nigeria. Why did you choose to say Africa, amazing Africa, other than the alliteration?
Well, it wasn't an easy decision to make, and I don't know whether there was a right decision or a wrong decision. It took probably a couple of years to decide, and in the end, I decided that I didn't want to be writing specifically about Nigeria. I wanted readers to have the sense that this middle class, affluent, modern, urban lifestyle happens all over Africa, that it isn't just Nigeria. Whichever I decided to do, there would have been problems. There are problems with just saying Africa because, of course, so many children and maybe even adults assume that Africa is one place. And there would have been problems if I had chosen just specifically Nigeria as well. So I don't think that one can live in Nigeria or write about Nigeria or even Africa and ignore the great difference between the poor and the middle class. Even the poor and the middle class is such an enormous leap. I think certainly in the UK it's easier to ignore those issues because we live in much more segregated way. Even though there is poverty in the UK, there are areas that are poor, and then there are areas that are middle class and areas that are wealthy. And even the real poor people who make our clothes and all our items are often in foreign countries and we don't see them. But in Nigeria and in Africa, those people are on the same street together. And I didn't feel I could write about Anna Hibiscus in a broad way as I wanted to and ignore that whole part. You know, Anna and those street children are on the same street together. There's just a...
I'm wondering, do you have a multicultural background yourself?
Yes. My mother is from the UK, and my father is Nigerian. Some people had parents from the same culture, some people had parents from different cultures. Even within Nigeria, there are many cultures. So if your mother is Yoruba and your father is Igbo, they're both black, but you have two very different cultures, two very different languages, and children are navigating that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you have one parent who's from another continent, then that's more interesting. I mean, we had friends who had African American father and a Nigerian mother, or an African American mother, Nigerian father, so both their parents were black, but from really different cultures. And yeah, we had happy, ordinary, happy lives doing fun things with our families and friends.
My first graders loved the story in Have Fun, Anna Hibiscus, when grandfather is giving Anna advice about her travels to Canada to meet her grandmother and how she's going to find that there are families out there, families that will have dogs.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember at school people saying, in England people have dogs in their houses, and we would all say, that's so horrible, it's not true, it's not true. And then I came to the UK and gradually over time fell in love with dogs. And, you know, there are cultural boundaries and differences, and when Anna goes back to her family in the next book, she's changed, and she then meets people who, you know, her own family, who don't completely understand her anymore. What one culture thinks is horrible, another culture can really enjoy.
Right.
And when you go back and forth, that's a funny balance.
Right. I was thrilled when your book was a Hornbook honor book. Do you even know what the Hornbook was?
No, I didn't. And I had a very excited message on my phone just at the point when I was locked out of the house with a very cross youngest child in the rain, and I had a very excited phone call telling me. Since then, obviously, I've researched it a lot, and I am very, very honored.
Did you get to select your illustrator?
Well, I did have a say, and I was very clear that I wanted an African illustrator, preferably a Nigerian illustrator. And we looked for a couple of years. I was sent some drawings, various drawings that weren't quite right. And finally, Walker Books, who's my publisher in the UK, found Lauren and sent me her pictures, and they were wonderful. And she started illustrating the first Anna Hibiscus, and her pictures just bring Anna's world alive. They make it really a whole lovely world in itself, just what I imagine in my mind. And I went to a meeting to meet Lauren, and Lauren is a lovely blonde white lady from Bristol who's never been to Africa in her life. It really made me realize that there is a bigger world, you know, there's a consciousness that's bigger than us. And Lauren really draws what I want for Anna Hibiscus.
When I heard you say that you wanted a Nigerian African illustrator, you didn't get that. But you did get something that really complements your books exceptionally well.
I did, and I learned something as well through that process.
Will there be any new Anna Hibiscus stories?
There's going to be 2 more Anna Hibiscus fiction books. Anna Hibiscus goes back to her family in the 5th book, and in the 6th book she goes back to the village that her family are from, the village that grandmother and grandfather were born in, and where her ancestors are all buried, where her family lived before they came to the city. And there are going to be 5 more Carspotter books.
Wonderful. Well, I hope that this country will be graced with your presence many, many times to come. Any last words for our viewers?
I'm just so pleased that my books are coming into children's hands and that they're reading about that wonderful world that was my childhood.
Atinuke, thank you so much for appearing on www.spicyreads.org. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Goodbye. You can wait.
This is Ed Spicer. Thanks for stopping by. This video was filmed at the Cooperative Children's Book Center. Thanks, KT. It was great.